You're listening to CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications and Power Platform and Common Data Service and Dataverse and whatever you call it podcast. I'm Joel Lindstrom here with George Doubinski. George, how you doing today?
I'm good. How's your family verse?
My family verse is good. I'm trying to talk my wife into letting me rename our kids. She hasn't quite bought into that, but I think it would be good because I think to be more competitive, we should maybe name them something different.
Interesting. Well, what are you thinking about? Who was that? Elon, who tried to name the baby some unpronounceable name, got rejected and things like that. I really like a friend of mine who lives in Denmark, and they wanted to name their daughter Llewellyn, which is a common English name, reasonably common, right? It's a surname, but it's reasonably common because they lived on Llewellyn Street and so on. So they went in Denmark, they went into the registry, and turns out that was the first time someone ever named their child Llewellyn in Denmark. If that happens in Denmark, you have to apply for permission to name your child that. So you have to give a good reason for naming your child that. So it's a kind of government looking after children saying, hey, look, you cannot make life of your child miserable, right? I think it's a very good rule, right? If name is common and used before, it's fine. You can name your child Kale with a C if you want to. But if name is the first, then you have to apply and you have to justify how did you come up with the name? Why would you want to name your child something that never been used before?
Yeah, I've heard those news stories of people who want to name their children something weird and they get rejected. That doesn't happen here. You can name your kids whatever you want here.
Look, it happened to Microsoft, right? So they named their child once and it got rejected, and now they trying again.
Right. So that's what we're talking about naming is because, as happens very frequently, Microsoft is renaming Common Data Service again, and no more Project Oakdale, no more Data Flex. It's Dataverse. You have in Teams, you have Dataverse for Teams, and then Common Data Service, as it was formerly known, is now Dataverse. So lots of good jokes came from that, such as I'm going to be He-Man and the Master of the Dataverse, other things like that. So I guess people don't like change, and people who were Common Data Service fans really liked the name Common Data Service. I've really stopped caring about what they name it. I figured, number one, I've never heard of an existing customer stopping using it because they changed the name. And I also know a lot of people don't really understand what Common Data Service is. And Common Data Service to me always sounded like a definition, not a name. It sounded like, this thing is the Common Data Service, which is based on the Common Data model. It sounds like you're using a description, not a name. So what do you think of Dataverse?
Well, customers still call it CRM, whether we want it or not, right?
Right. And Microsoft also calls it CRM if you talk to some people, and they have this intelligent CRM or whatever that they partnered with somebody for. So, yeah, it's a good thing. We talked about that before. To me, I think I cut my teeth on CRM, but CRM is basically a commodity as far as it's like ERP. There's things that you expect it to do.
Look, we did talk about it. I agree. It's not a good name for a product either, right? Microsoft CRM, it served its purpose, and its time was back then. So Dataverse, I'm not sold because that equally means nothing to a kind of ordinary customer who doesn't particularly care. The name needs to be catchy. The name needs to be a name of the product, descriptive name of the product. But then again, when you buy a product that with the sole purpose of customizing it left and right, and using it as a platform, what would be a good name? So it's a difficult decision, right? So Dataverse is a good name.
Universe of data. They want this to be the place where the data comes.
It totally makes sense for Harvard project, right?
Yeah. Now everybody in the community thinks they're a intellectual property lawyer too, and thinks we got him because this Harvard thing has the same name. Well, we don't know what happened there, and it's been now how many days? It's been about a week since they announced it. Nothing from the Dataverse project or anything saying, "Hey, you got our name." So it makes me think that this one is going to stick.
I think this one is going to stay. What surprised me is that, remember, we did touch on that the name is going to be for Project Oakdale, and whatever CDS is going to be a pro version, a step up,
right?
And instead of CDS and say CDS Lite, because CDS Lite is kind of step down, but we ended up with kind of side step. So we ended up with Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams. I don't know. To me, Dataverse. Look, I'm with you. I kind of stopped caring. It's like nothing's going to change. Searching for things for a time being becomes a little bit difficult. So you have to kind of type both. I just put common data service space, Dataverse space, whatever I'm searching for. But other than that, yeah, whatever. Of course, some good news. Sean, who is asleep at the moment, I presume, he's now column service expert.
Yeah, so the story behind that is on one of the pages, I think it was the portal template page where you download the portal template for field service and project service templates. Apparently somebody did a find and replace to replace field with column. And that's the other thing, if you don't know, they've renamed some of the components within the Common Data Service to be consistent with how they're named in other platforms like Microsoft Lists and SharePoint. And so fields are now columns, entities are now table, option sets are now choices, things like that, which we can talk about that a little bit more. But yes, in their haste, apparently they did a find replace and replaced field with column, and so you had column service as one of the options. So that column service sounds more exciting to me than field service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, we're gonna have more and more of those like entities tables. I constantly catching myself naming things.
That was a job in ancient Greece, column service.
I think. Sorry,
I said that was a job in ancient Greece, column service. Somebody had to service the columns at the Colosseum.
Very funny. I'm searching. We had a tip ages ago, how to rename things. I can't find it. The sequence of renaming. You know, when you rename an entity.
Right.
A table. Back then it was renaming an entity, and how to rename things in Excel spreadsheet using translations. So, and you rename them in the right sequence, so you don't accidentally rename wrong things, and you rename both plural and uppercase and lowercase and things like that. So there was a sequence somewhere in one of the tips or in comments to one of the tips. Anyway, so I got caught. Actually, I posted just yesterday or today, whatever the date is, it was at a fresh tip where I got caught exactly with the rename as well. Like, I completely forgot that we renamed things. We renamed entity. And I was searching for that entity in Power Automate, right? Mm-hmm. And for 20 minutes, I was kind of stumped. And you never know with the... my first reaction was, something has changed. And Microsoft hidden this entity and put a flag somewhere. and I'm just not aware of
It's
that.
always the contact entity. It's always the contact entity.
It was users.
Okay. But for me, every time I go in and write a flow, and this is a problem with flow showing just the entity display name, but
Yes.
you go in and I can never find the contact entity, and people will rename it person or customer or something like that. And that's where, but yeah, I mean.
And okay, I'll give you a tip, which was part of the tip, that if you absolutely sure you don't remember what the name for the contact entity is, and you can't be bothered looking into metadata and things like that, right? What you can do is say enter custom value, right, and put the schema name. So you put context in there. You save the flow. It will allow you to continue. And the next time you open, the right name will be in place.
So you use custom name, put in the standard name for it, save it, and open it up, and it
will change to display name. Yep.
Oh, cool. Okay, you've got to type the schema name in though. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And where's the tip of the day for that, George?
Latest 1392.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so here's my contrarian take on it. People who complain about Microsoft renaming stuff are like 45-year-old guys who are music critics that can't sing or play an instrument themselves personally. Renaming stuff is hard, and I have not heard anybody that has a really great idea or has come up with something themselves that somebody else hasn't already taken. So just like with renaming CDS to Dataverse, you're not going to lose any customers because of this, but you might gain some new ones that, will see this as, wow, that's a new product. Same thing with renaming fields to columns and option sets to choices and things like that, is you make it consistent with people who you want to move to the platform, so it's easier for them to adopt it, rather than making it harder or making play to the crowd you already have, because you've already got those people and you're not going to lose them. So that might sound kind of cold, but I think it's the reality that they have so many people building apps on SharePoint and want to move them off of that, so they have a path to upgrade them. That getting them to be comfortable. That's where you see the grid inside of Dataverse for Teams. It's very much like Microsoft Lists, intentionally so, because it creates a comfort factor where I'm building Canvas apps on SharePoint. Oh, this looks very similar. I know what to do with that. It's very intuitive. And that's the other thing, is they do focus groups and people that don't use a platform, and show them different ideas and get their feedback, or show them different name concepts. And then based on that, they move forward. And it's like Microsoft sometimes, and other product companies too, can't win because they get criticized for not listening to people, and then when they make changes based on feedback from customers, then they get criticized by the people who like it the way it is.
Look, this bit is difficult, as you said. It's a technology, so you have to give it a technological name, and it's not a product in itself. Right. So, but you want to give it a product feel. You want to give it a feel of something you can build with. So that's why it's a difficult choice, and it's kind of you name in tables and columns and rows. I feel, because I've been with the platform for a long time, I feel it doesn't do justice to those things, because column is not a column. As we know, like put the money in and it's immediately 3 database fields or 3 database columns. So it's not a column, and entity is not, strictly speaking, a table. It's more to it, but yeah, I get the notion that you kind of bring it to the lowest common denominator with the crowd you're trying to move over. You kind of lower the bar so people can enter. And it's fine. Dataverse, I get it. I just don't like the name, honestly. It's hard. Don't ask me how would I name it. I don't know. But Dataverse is kind of a bit pretentious to my taste.
Yes. The other thing that I don't hear anybody acknowledging is they look at other products. And for the Power Platform, other the competitive products aren't Salesforce so much as things like Airtable and Monday.com and things like that. And if you look at Airtable, they've got tables and columns. And so it's also a factor of what are people in the industry, or what are our competitors' customers calling this stuff to make it easier and more appealing for them.
True. You need to move people across, because if we talk about naming product or technologies as such, take a look at AWS versus Azure. Azure tends to be a very kind of conservative / a bit boring in naming things. It's, Azure SQL Server and Azure blobs. But then sometimes they do venture into Azure Front Door and things like that. Whilst AWS tends to stick with kind of absolutely random names, like Route 53, Lighthouse and what's not. And it's a mishmash on both sides, but it's hard. If you're working with this technology day in, day out, and you know the names, but if not, if I tell you that Amazon released Amazon, brick wall, what is it? I say, I don't know, right? Probably firewall, some sorts. I don't know. So neither do I, and I'm not sure if it exists. Probably not. Doesn't. Saying Azure Blob, yeah, it kind of hits a bit more at what the product does, but it's not as catchy. I don't know. It's difficult. It's kind of
right.
You always balance in between naming product versus naming technology versus making it appealing for the existing users. It needs to be easy to write, to pronounce. It needs to be searchable, right? Don't forget that.
Right.
It needs to. You need to hit high. That actually could be a really good argument for renaming as well, like naming entities and tables. Imagine someone using competing technology, and they're searching for a specific puzzle. How to apply row-level security, right? How do I hide row, or how do I hide column? How do I protect column and what's not? If you name, from Microsoft side, if you name things fields and entities, you're never going to be part of the result set of that search. You want to be there. You want to become visible. You want to be in your face and say, hey, look, this is easy, right? You can do it. Huh? Once, twice, maybe not going to change someone's mind, but it's like an advertisement, right? We can do it, we can do it, we can do it. We always come up in searches. Whatever you're searching for, we are there for you. One day, person say, hey, why don't we look at this technology? So there is a bit of that as well, I think. What do you think? Like, if you're trying to overlap with the existing technologies that kind of get in the way of people, you want to name your drink so it is soda as well in US, right? Or soft drink in Australia.
Yeah, you want people to find it. You want which is the problem with picking an existing name that somebody else is using, because it dilutes the findability of it. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think to me it makes sense, because again, Dataverse for Teams is not designed for you and me that already use CRM, CDS, whatever. It's designed for the people that use SharePoint and other things, and the 75 plus million daily active users of Teams. And so, but then they need those people to know that, hey, this is the same technology that's in this more expensive product, and you can upgrade, and here's the reasons why, and things like that. And that's where, when it comes down to it, and I made this point in a channel that we're both in yesterday, that I find that many of these arguments where people get very, very, excited and angry about renaming things or a topic like managed solutions or other things, it either comes from they don't like change, they're comfortable, they don't want people to move their cheese, if you will, and they also are afraid of things they don't know. And so if I don't know Canvas apps, I'm going to be all about, oh, here's why model-driven apps are better. And you can make that argument both ways. Same thing with managed solutions. Same things with, really anything. Portals. If I don't know portals, I'm going to argue against Power Apps portals because I'm afraid I don't really know it, so I'm leery of it. So I think that this comes down to that too. And again, you can voice your displeasure and say, I like fields. And you know what? When you're doing your implementation, if you want to call something a field, go for it. Nobody's gonna come get you if you do that. And I'll find myself doing that. I stumble. I just say, oh, I'm sorry. This is now called a column, but it's basically a field in the database. So George, again, if you change your name, I'll still be your buddy.
I'm trying to. I added a moniker, but we'll see if it sticks. But not all things we don't know we're afraid of. Sometimes we don't want to know things because they're boring. Right?
Sometimes you're afraid of things like snakes because you do know about them. That's true.
Like, I honestly probably don't have survival skills to survive, minus 40. See what I've done here? It's minus 40 for both of us. So I don't have skills to survive, minus 40 in my underwear without any tools. But I don't even want to learn. It doesn't scare me because it's not a threat to me.
Yep.
Not in Australia.
No, but there's very few things like that will kill you. Well, everything in Australia will kill you. No, but things like people renaming things and technologies that I'm not that familiar with, that's not going to be your negative 40.
Oh, that will kill you in Australia. If you name, your spider Fluffy, every kid would want to pet it. So things will kill you.
All right. Well, on that note, George, I hope you have a good rest of the week.
Oh, hold on. I do have parting thought that we probably in the wrong business altogether. My son used to play a game called Roblox.
Yeah, my son plays it.
Last year, these guys sold. They sell Robux, virtual currency inside. So they sold 1.2 billion worth of that currency in real money. They have more monthly users than Minecraft.
Right. How
good. But the interesting thought I was reading about is using Roblox to build virtual offices and gamify your workspace. That was kind of interesting thought. I would never think to build kind of a sim city for the office, to have a water cooler and things like that. I mean, interesting idea.
Yeah, that would be an interesting idea.
If pandemic continues, but
they're doing concerts in Roblox and everything now, so.
Oh yeah, they're pulling big names. No, but I thought that's kind of interesting. His name, catchy name, very good name, and it's a product. On that.
All right. Well, George, good to catch up with you. Join us next time.